Fresh.
Welcome to the Introduction to Fraud Information session. This is a very exciting session that will touch on various topics around definition of fraud and ways that you can put a dent or minimize fraud. It's really an active concept out there. There are 24/7 fraudsters, but we as individuals and companies are barely spending several hours in talking about fraud. And so myself, Kendrick Christie, I'm a chartered accountant, certified fraud examiner, certified cryptocurrency investigator, justice of the peace in New Providence, the sunny Bahamas. I've been practicing accounting audits, external and internal audits, and also done a number of forensic accounting and fraud investigations for the past 28 years. This is historic, as this is my first individual video on presentation on fraud. And so we want to welcome you. We want you to sit in, listen, subscribe, and hit the like button on our video, and share with us your feedback and as we provide another voice in the fight against fraud. As we continue on with this information session, I want to talk about fraud. And I'm sure a lot of my audience are familiar with fraud examples and probably been defrauded before. And so we want to talk a little bit about what is fraud, what is the definition of fraud. As a certified fraud examiner, I use the definition as laid out by the ACFE, or Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, which indicates that fraud is any activity that relies on deception to result in an unfair advantage or gain over another individual. And it really then turns into crime if there's a loss of monies or property as a result of that deception. And so it's very broad. We also use Black's Law Dictionary. It's something that you can look up that has a more defined definition of fraud. I'm sure some of my audience have been defrauded, and it usually involves deception or misuse of the truth. As we continue, I want to really make you aware of a very fascinating and very resourceful piece of information. I'm sure that some of you might have heard about, but I've used it personally in presentations, and it's actually free. It's not a lot that you can get free these days, and when I say free without committing fraud, okay? But there's a report that comes out from my association. It's called the Occupational Report to the Nations. It is released by the ACFE, or Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, every year. This year, 2022, it will be the 12th edition. And it really collects statistics and data on fraud from 133 countries around the world. The Bahamas is included. I think in previous years there's been 2 or 3 cases that have been handed into the statistical database from accountants and CFEs in the Bahamas. And it's really a worldwide report. It used to, in previous years, be more of an American report, but now it's a worldwide report. And so it's free, and it has a lot of good information on fraud occurrences around the world, how you can combat them, scientific polls and statistics on what you can do, what is more effective as far as detection or prevention of fraud. And so I'd encourage you to go to the ACFE website, www.acfe.com, and you can access this report to the nations. As I said before, it's the 12th edition. It's based on 2,110 cases of occupational report, 133 cases of countries around the world. And I would really say to you that part of our fight in fraud is to inform ourselves and become up to date. And this report is one of the pinnacle documents that one can read. Okay? I hope that you're still on this plane ride. We're cruising now. We're 30,000 feet, and no turbulence yet. But we're going to talk a little bit about a concept called the fraud triangle. I've been really elated to learn about this concept many years ago, and I think it really explains the motives and the things that can happen in companies. All companies, all non-profit organizations are subject to fraud. I mean, in my experience, I've seen owners of companies even commit fraud against their own company, and it's really an area that one would, if you're doing a forensic investigation, you pretty much have everybody that you would probably put under your radar of being capable of committing fraud. It's just when these things come together. I'm sure you would have watched The Perfect Storm, which is a movie that was based on real life, where 3 storms came together, and there was a boat that was caught in the middle of all of that, and that was really a disaster movie. And so when we talk about the fraud triangle, it was a concept created by Dr. Donald Christie many years ago, and I'll take you through it very, very quickly. And the components of this are opportunity, rationalization, and pressure. And when all 3 of those things come together, they sort of push an individual into committing fraud or creating a situation where there's a mix of all of these things to make it more suitable for fraud. When we talk about opportunity, we talk about a situation where there's maybe a break in a control, where, for instance, if you are not counting inventory, whatever inventory that you may have, you're not counting inventory on a regular basis, and employees then would become aware of that. And so there's an opportunity, or you simply have the door of your business or checkbooks laying around, or passwords laying around, and so there's an opportunity then for an individual, an employee, or vendor. Sometimes we only think about employees, but there are vendors and different persons visiting our premises, or even sitting outside tapping into the Wi-Fi that could then access or hack this information. So we have opportunity, and then we have pressure. When we talk about pressure, I remember a case that I looked at, and I had to be careful to call names, but there was an individual that was seemingly a person of integrity. This person was known to be a really forthright person, someone that you needed anything at the company, that you needed a favor, or you needed a loan, that was the person to go to. Something happened, I think, where this individual's son got on hard times and became a financial pressure. And so I give that example to you, that individual then became very stressed out, and proceeded then, it was detected some years ago that this individual began to defalcate or steal monies from the company. And it was really sort of a case where people were very amazed that this person of such integrity would do such a thing. So in that case, we have the opportunity. This individual was responsible for cash and reconciliations, and the person had pressure, meaning that their son was involved in some financial difficulties, so that created a lot of pressure for this individual. And so I'm just filling out the triangle for you. The last part of it deals with rationalization, and we all practice this, in our daily lives. Rationalization could be that we find a wallet on the ground, and we say, hey, that person, that's something. Some people might say it's a blessing from God, or it's a blessing from heaven, and so you then take the money and proceed to throw the wallet away. So rationalization is one where a lot of employees, individuals, rationalize. I mean, there was a case of individual, and I use cases from around the world, but there was an individual that was apparently stealing funds, and apparently he had complained about his salary. And over the years, he said he thought his salary should be this, and the company said no. When they did the investigation, they found that the amount of money that he had stolen was almost equal to the salary increase that he had asked for every year. And what that tells you in that person's mind is he rationalized that I'm due this amount of money, and so I'm going to feel better because this is not actually theft. This is something that's due to me. And so when you have these 3 storms come together, opportunity, pressure, and rationalization, it creates a perfect storm, and this is what we call the fraud triangle. Fraud diamond is a concept developed further from Dr. Christie's model, which was a fraud triangle, and it added another component. So the fraud diamond has the same three components that are the same as the fraud triangle. You have the incentive or pressure, which are interchangeable. We have opportunity, and we have rationalization. So those are all still parts of the fraud diamond. The fraud diamond introduces another concept which is called capability. And so again, this is very fascinating, especially for a fraud examiner like myself, as we move around this road and we actually study the science behind and the psychology of individuals who commit fraud and why fraud happens in an organization, what you need to do. And so the fraud diamond introduces this concept capability, which really refers to, is this individual that's coming into your organization capable or has certain traits that would make this person susceptible, or even this person is trying to penetrate into your company or organization and they have a background of fraud. And we always say that, innocent till proven guilty. When we do forensic engagements, we go in with a mind of independence, and we have allegations that come up and indicate that this person or this group of individuals might have committed fraud, and we keep a sound mind, independent, because a lot of forensic investigations we do are fraud investigations. Some of them we find that the fraud allegations, there's no evidence, or we find them sometimes to be not true. But what the science of this capability in the fraud diamond tells you is that there's certain individuals who have a propensity for coming into an organization or have some issues with their moral code and their ethical situation. And so most individuals would have a good idea of what is right or wrong, meaning that if there's 10 computers on a table and it belongs to the company, I would not take it. Some individuals will have a history of taking or stealing items from companies. They come into your company and they have no qualms about taking 2 of those computers or even all of them off of that, from that company. And so this is an interesting concept, and it sort of expands the fraud triangle, and it gives us I guess the concept that really the individuals who have a mindset, who already have a mindset that they're coming into your company or your organization or coming into your friendship really with the intention of defrauding. And so this is really an interesting concept, and I think I support it because I've seen it in practice where persons would go from one company to the next or from one fraud scheme to the next, basically twisting it. We see this a lot in the loan schemes, we call it, or pyramid schemes, where persons would deliberately set them up, defraud a lot of individuals, wipe their slate clean, they have VPN addresses, it's hard to find them, and they set up another pyramid scheme somewhere else in the world, or even in the same city. And so we really pay homage to this fraud diamond, which is really an expanded concept on the fraud triangle. We talk about the fraud diamond and the concept of capability. And what we also think about as we examine why fraud occurs is that not only do we have these perfect storm elements of opportunity, rationalization, and incentive, so these things coming together, but also again the concept of capability. What we mean as well with that is that does the person in the middle of the storm, they're already incentivized, they have an opportunity to commit the fraud, the door is open, the inventory is there, they have a financial distraction or financial pressure, and they rationalize that the company would miss this inventory, the company would miss this cash, okay? The concept of capability is that, are they able to commit this fraud? And so what I think when I think about capability is whether this person has, for instance, if it's an IT environment, or if it's an environment where you have cameras, where you have computers, does this person have access to this information? Is this person able to collude with another person? Because sometimes you have layers of security in an organization, and so this person might have the 3 elements around them but they may not have the capability. And so you see a lot of collusion to where I can get into the warehouse and take inventory, but I can't get it out because the cameras are functioning. And let me then collude with someone else. Or let me get the password of someone to get into that computer system. And so we do capabilities, then it becomes a function of, and when we do investigations, for instance, we look at who is capable, who has the history, and who has access to these systems, and we start with that in order to focus our investigation. Some of the things that we can do to make a dent in fraud. The first thing that I'm talking about now is having internal controls over financial reporting. And we talk about my audience out there. I'm sure some of you in small businesses, medium-sized and large. I've had experience with all kinds, and I know it's difficult, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, but it's always about having some level of controls put in, some layer of oversight, so that you can perhaps minimize fraud. It's akin to if you leave a vehicle in the park or on the road, and you leave your door open, keys in the car. And it makes it very easy then for someone to just walk away with your vehicle. If your vehicle is locked, your key is in your pocket, if you have an alarm system, it makes it more difficult. And so that's all we're trying to do as fraud examiners, is encourage you to make it a bit more difficult and using the tools of the trade. And so that's what I'm going to share with you today is fight on fraud. It's a difficult fight, but it's one that we can certainly feel comfortable with, that we are minimizing. And no one likes to be defrauded. I mean, no one likes to be a victim of crime or defrauded. It's not a good feeling. And so I'm going to continue to share with you some things that you can do. And one of the first ones is really internal controls over financial reporting. Small and medium-sized businesses, a lot of them, I think about 50% of your businesses use QuickBooks. It's really a good system, and there are other forms of software. I'm not an owner in QuickBooks, so I'm just mentioning that as it's a very popular software. And you can produce a lot of, you can have your accounting done and your financial statements produced out of QuickBooks. And in this case, what we are saying is that have a level of control built into your financial reporting. For instance, you would need to ensure that you limit the amount of persons that have administrative rights in the accounting system. These are what we typically call power users that can make wholesale changes, deletions, and edits in the financial reporting system. We also encourage you to make what we call adjustments rather than accounting adjustments in the QuickBooks, so that you have a trail of what has occurred. If you were to decrease cash, or you decrease inventory, or buy an investment, and you find that there's an error or there's a correction, that you use the adjustment feature in this accounting system. So you can have 1,000 investment plus $100 correction, and we see that the correction was made by an adjustment. And if you're just changing a figure, it really is not proper accounting, and it doesn't leave a trail as to, you were to try to find out who made that adjustment. And so using the system and leaving behind what we call a proper trail is important. Limiting the power users and knowing who they are and having oversight over what is happening in your accounting system and financial reports is very important. The other thing that you can do is really enhancing your internal controls over cash receipts and disbursements. And this is where a lot of small businesses have a lot of issues. In the Bahamas, for instance, we have a lot of cash collection. We one of the first countries the first country to institute what we call the sand dollar, which is electronic currency akin to its legal tender. And gradually we're seeing the phasing out of checks and cash. But there is certainly heavy usage of cash, and cash is very susceptible to theft. All right, it's a close cousin of theft. And so what we encourage businesses is to have some sort of control. Obviously, depositing cash on a regular basis, counting the cash, knowing what the float is, demonstrating to employees that you have cameras. These are things that obviously the ultimate is to phase out cash collection. And we know this is country specific. A lot of countries are, in the electronic world, but even in electronic means, certainly you're still collecting payments from customers, and so you have to have proper controls. Even over disbursements, that you show, for instance, if you have a petty cash system, that you have a proper what we call impress system, showing the cash coming in to your petty cash. You have to pay $10 for postage or $20 for a supply, that you actually record it. And so recording is important. It enables you as a business owner or manager to see and determine what is going on in your company. And that you actually have the cash locked up and you deposit it on a regular basis. We don't have time to necessarily get into all of the things that you can do, but think about some of the things that you can do over cash receipts and cash disbursements. The other thing that I'm talking about is internal audit. Is in either ensuring that you have an internal audit unit if you are medium-sized or large business. Internal audit actually is more effective at detecting fraud than external audit, which is an audit of the financial statements of the company. And I can tell you, as an external auditor, I wear many hats. As an internal auditor, I've been able to detect fraud or to give clients more advice versus just financial statement audit. So internal audits are very effective because the internal auditor is coming into the company on a regular basis, looking at controls, doing cash counts, and just, sometimes you look at the psychology of fraud, and a lot of persons who are fraudsters are very shrewd. We sometimes think of them as not being in tune with what's happening in the world, but some of them are very shrewd individuals. And so they can figure out fast if you are missing controls. So the internal audit is an effective way of demonstrating to employees that you have a control system, that you have an internal auditor coming in, checking all of the areas of the business, human resources, information tech, and giving advice on what works and what doesn't work. Okay. The next thing we talk about is a whistleblower system. Now, whistleblower is at the end of the slide. Whistleblower, according to the ACFE report to the nations, having a tip system or whistleblower system is the most effective way of detecting fraud. It's actually the system of a phone number or an email or a way of somebody, an employee, communicating to the organization that they've seen fraud or they have a fraud incident to report. And it's really at the top of the list. Whistleblower is number one, and internal audit is number two. And so you really want to have look at these methods, determine which one works for you, and then determine on the cost benefit basis which one you can implement. I want to thank my audience today for sitting in on this introduction to fraud and forensic accounting. I'm glad that you sat in and gotten some good information. But we want you to hit subscribe or like and give us feedback as we continue on this fight against fraud. I really put a lot of time into this, and this is my first, and so the audience listening in is a historic event. I want to thank my videographer and friend, Mr. Valhir Cooper, who's done all of the editing and putting all of this video together. We really want to get your insights. We want to thank you for really listening in, and we want to encourage you to continue to take the time to study and resource information. And anything that you do in terms of getting information or listening to information sessions like this, and sharing it with your friends. Again, you can look me up, Kendrick Christie. I'm Chartered Accountant on my site, www.kchristieco.com. You can get more information, share it, and as we proceed, and hopefully we can help you to not be a victim of fraud.